Hello, welcome back to I Create For You. We're going into the spooky Yellowstone book, Tales of Hauntings, Strange Happenings, and Other Local Lore. This one's called Dark Presence. Oh, isn't that fitting? It's chapter 13. Cody, Wyoming. They wanted the house as soon as they saw it. Her husband loved the wide open spaces of the West and the stories of Buffalo Bill. She loved the proximity of Yellowstone National Park. Their son happily eyed the pretty daughter of the next-door neighbor. It was a perfect place to live. The realtor told them that the stone circles near the property were traces left from a teepee encampment long ago. The circles add a wonderful Western touch to this lovely home, or so she thought at the time. The family moved in right away, and their son transferred to the local high school. On weekends, the couple cheered their son on at his sporting events, took scenic drives, and visited Yellowstone. Time passed swiftly, and the son graduated from high school and college, then moved away from home. Empty nesters now, the husband spent most weekends riding his motorcycle while the wife stayed home and baked. She was baking blueberry muffins when the hospital called and told her to come at once. Her husband had been in a serious accident on his motorcycle. She was out the door in 2 minutes and raced recklessly to the hospital, hoping to get there in time to say goodbye to her husband. Someone was waiting for her at the entrance to the emergency room, and she was rushed to her husband's side. There was barely time for him to squeeze her hand and smile into her tear-filled eyes. "Love you, beautiful," he said, and died. It was the worst moment of her life. Her son arrived soon afterward and drove her home. He took over the funeral arrangements while she wept and finished making the blueberry muffins, her husband's favorite. The next few days went by in a haze. The house felt empty without her husband, in spite of the friends and family that filled it. And the dog seemed to go mad. He barked and growled whenever anyone opened the door to the cellar, and he refused to go into the den where the family kept his bed. Soon, too soon, her husband was laid to rest in the local graveyard. Everyone left, including her son, who was packing up his apartment so he could live with her until she grew accustomed to widowhood. The moment she walked into the empty house, she knew something was wrong. She stood frozen in the living room doorway as the dog came up to her, tail wagging. The dog stopped abruptly and stared into the empty living room, growling softly. His eyes followed the path of something evil that was moving across the floor. Boards creaked under invisible pressure as the something evil entered the den. She watched in terror as the door to the den swung shut of its own volition. The dog barked once, low and fierce. Hair spiked up along its back. She shrieked and ran to her bedroom, dog at her heels. Inside the bedroom, the feeling of malice abated. She knew at once that the dark presence could not enter this room. When her eyes fell on the icon of Mary and baby Jesus hanging on the wall, she understood why. The holy object was generations old, and it glowed faintly in the dimness, its goodness actively pushing back evil. She sat on the bed and tried to think, the scary scene replaying itself in her mind. Her dog refused to enter the den after her husband's death. Why? Because it overlooked the teepee ruins? The thought lodged in her head out of nowhere. She wondered if this house was built on some native burial ground. If so, why hadn't they felt the evil spirit when they first bought the house? Had her husband's presence kept it at bay, or had it been sleeping until aroused by her terrible grief? She had no answer to these questions. She kept the dog with her that night. He slept at the foot of the bed, and she was grateful for his snoring presence. Daylight woke her. She laid sleepily in bed, trying to decide if she should rise. Then she remembered the strange presence in the house last night and sat bolt upright, body cold with fear. "I'm being ridiculous," she told the dog, who was dancing impatiently at the door. They entered the hall together, and at once she knew she hadn't imagined the dark presence. The house seethed with malice. She hurried into the kitchen, where the sense of menace seemed weaker in the dancing sunlight, and let the dog outside to do his business. As she drank her coffee, her eye fell on the cellar door. The dog had barked and growled whenever someone opened it. Was the dark presence in the cellar too? Her hand shook suddenly, splashing coffee on the table, when she remembered that she had a load of laundry in the dryer. She would have to go down in the basement to remove it. She took a deep breath. There was no way she was going into that cellar alone. When the dog finished eating, she put on his leash. He started growling when she opened the cellar door. A flood of cold air rushed over them both. The dog barked sharply as she snapped at the cellar light and gazed down the empty staircase. "We have to get the laundry," she said, grabbing his collar, and placed her foot on the first step. The dog growled again and showed all his teeth. He backed away, pulling her away with him, and she followed with relief. She sensed a wall of evil at the bottom of the steps, and she didn't know what to cross it. Better to buy new clothes than go down into that cellar. She hurried to her room to shower and dress. She wasn't going to spend any more time in this empty house than was strictly necessary. The dog padded into the living room and jumped on the sofa, which she took as a sign that the dark presence wasn't in there at the moment. Thank God. She went to the store to get groceries, then spent the afternoon with a friend who was a grief counselor. She heard the dog barking as soon as she pulled into the driveway at supper time. The dog scraped frantically at the front door. She turned the key and shot into the yard when she opened the door, tail between his legs. He circled the yard several times before he calmed down enough to do his business. She waited for the dog on the doorstep, and they went into the house side by side. She took one shuddering look into the dark living room and swerved into the bright kitchen. A radio tuned to a Christian station kept the darkness at bay through dinner. As she ate dessert, she reflected that her son would arrive tomorrow afternoon. He would know what to do about the dark presence. In the meantime, the dog would stay in her room tonight, and she would take him with her tomorrow. As she washed dishes, the air in the room chilled noticeably, and she heard a scratching sound at the cellar door. The dog growled, and she hastily dried the last cup and hurried to her room. The scratching sound ceased when she shut her bedroom door, and the icon glowed reassuringly on the wall. It was easier to ignore the dark presence the second morning. She dressed hastily and opted to eat out rather than cook breakfast. The dog leapt eagerly into the car when she opened the door, delighted to ride with her as she did errands. They were taking a stroll at the local park that afternoon when her son called to say he'd reached Cody. She'd asked him to remove the laundry from the dryer, and he agreed with a laugh. "Putting me to work already?" he teased. "That's what moms do," she said. The dog entered the house without hesitation that evening, barking joyfully and jumping all over her son. "I'm happy to see you too," he said, rubbing behind his ears. She decided not to mention the dark presence. She didn't want her son to think she was crazy. Later over dinner, her son said, "I folded the laundry and put it on your bed. It smelled a little musty. You may want to wash it again." "Thanks, son," she said, serving herself more pasta. "That cellar is real creepy," her son continued. "It felt like someone was staring at me the whole time I was down there. Gave me goosebumps." He laughed uneasily. "But that's stupid, right?" A huge bang from the den cut off his last word. Mother and son stared at each other aghast. Her son leapt through the door, switching on the lights as he raced toward the den. The dog stayed on his heels until they reached the den. It stopped in the doorway and growled. The mother stood behind the dog and stared at the huge encyclopedia lying on the floor. Normally, the book stood in the middle of the desk between two bookends. "That's weird," her son said, picking up the encyclopedia and returning it to its place on the desk. "I wonder how that fell." He glanced around uneasily and then hurried her back to the kitchen, closing the den door firmly behind them. They finished dinner in silence, and then she retreated to her room to read while her son watched TV with the dog. He stopped by her room to say good night, and the dog jumped on the bed. Her son laughed incredulously. I thought the dog wasn't allowed on the bed. That was your father's rule, she said, rubbing the dog's ears fondly. She kissed her son good night and turned out the light. She woke in the middle of the night, heart pounding in fear, but was unable to say why she'd awoken. The dog was growling, and the holy icon on the wall glowed brightly as it kept darkness at bay. Then she heard a terrible scream from her son's bedroom. She realized it was the second scream she'd heard. It was the first cry that had woken her. She leapt out of bed, motherly instinct overriding her fear. She grabbed the icon off the wall and charged into the hallway just as her son bolted out of his room. In there, he screamed, pointing toward the door. A dark shadow hovering at the foot of my bed. Chilled, she watched the bedroom door swing open. A looming shadow floated into the hallway and hovered between them and the rest of the house. She held up the glowing icon, body shaking with fear. "Leave my son alone," she shouted. The dog growled and pressed against her legs as she recited the words of the Lord's Prayer. Slowly the dark presence fell back toward the living room, forced away by the powerful icon. She pressed forward one step, then two. She could hear something scratching on the cellar door as the black shadow fled toward the den. "Pack your bag right now," she told her son. She stood in the hallway, dressed only in a nightgown, icon held high to ward off danger as he raced to obey her. Then he held the icon as she threw her belongings into a bag. They fled past the scratching cellar door and burst through the front door with cries of relief. She drove them to the nearest hotel that accepted dogs and booked rooms for several days. In the morning she called the local realtor and put her house on the market. Then her son made some calls and located a house they could rent down in Jackson. They hired a moving company to pack up the house and left Cody, never to return. Mother and son never spoke of the dark presence to each other or anyone else, but they hung the holy icon on the wall of her bedroom as soon as they moved into their new home, and purchased a second holy icon soon after for her son's room, just in case. That's a little freaky. But, her idea of possibly being built on a native burial ground could be the reasoning for the dark presence. So here we go with the creepiness, right? So I'm going to try to draw something that looks like it's creepy, a dark presence, and it's like he said it was creeping at the foot of his bed. So I'm just going to and she had said it looked like it was crawling across the floor. So I'm going to try to combine the two and see if I can make well, let me get you down into my area here a little bit closer. Oh, there you go. Alrighty. Now. And of course, this isn't going to have a face, which is my favorite because I'm not that good at drawing faces. So. And actually, creepy stuff is my favorite type of thing. No, don't get the wrong impression of me. I'm not totally just for dark and morbid. Let me see if you can still see me. Okay, let me see. I gotta get up to do that because of where my camera's at. Okay. It's gonna look a little creepy. But hey, that's what she's seeing. Something creepy. Change that a little bit here. And this right here. There's its creepy arms. You get its creepy body going on here. And let's see. It's down on the floor. It's creeping down on the floor. Put his other leg up like it's, you know how when they creep along, they like shuffle a little bit. Let's see, I want to make a creepy hand here. Okay. I'm going to make this all kind of dark around him. He's going to be dark too. Then we're going to get the magic blender up here to make this a little bit ghostly. Let's see. All right. He's a crouching booger. Freaking the lady out. Freaking the mom out a little bit here. Actually, freaking them all out. A little bit more of the other hand. All right. See, the way I'm looking at it is this is his knee here. His leg is up and bent backwards, kinda. I don't know if that makes sense to you. And this one, he's gonna just start to bring it up around to move front. These long, creepy fingers. There's the floor. And of course, I always gotta make it a little bit shady around him, because he has that dark presence. He doesn't have the glow like the icon does. It's a good thing she had that, though. And it's a good thing it worked. Then we're going to make him a little ominous here with my blendy tool here. Because he's never really got any kind of features where you can see a face or anything. Get that all going around here. That dark ominousness. Ominousness, is that even a word? If not, I just made one. How's that? Ominousness. And there's the dark, creepy presence. Creeping up to the edge of the bed. Creeping up the basement steps. Maybe it just didn't like laundry. Didn't like doing chores. Well, I hope you liked that story. It was a little bit of a longer one, but it was interesting. It was quite interesting. I thought it was going to get to the point where it was saying something like the husband's spirit came back, but he wouldn't be an ominous spirit. But I really wish he would have came back to battle the dark presence, and keep his family safe. But that didn't happen in this case. I hope you liked it. I hope it interested you and we got a few more to go through on this book, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't. I'm glad you're here, and thank you to everyone who has subscribed so far and has hung out with me during these spooky ventures. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Stay spooky. Bye-bye for now.